Ladies and gentlemen, hear me clearly. There is Oni's sentence that when spoken with conviction becomes a shield against every manipulator, every energy drainer, every toxic person who thinks they can play you like a fool. Disrespect tolerated is disrespect invited. This statement isn't just a clever phrase. It's a principle that governs the dynamics of every relationship in your life, whether it's personal, professional, or even spiritual. See, most people think disrespect is something that happens to them, but the truth is, in many cases, it's something they've silently allowed, indirectly approved, or repeatedly excused. When you allow it once, you teach someone that it's acceptable. When you overlook it twice, you train them to make it a pattern. And before you know it, you're surrounded by people who think your time, your voice, and your worth are optional. Here's what people don't understand. You're always communicating what your standards are, whether you're speaking or not. Silence is not neutral. It's interpreted. When someone talks over you, undermines your ideas, dismisses your presence, and you do nothing, guess what they just learned? That it's okay. That you'll tolerate it. That their behavior comes without consequence. You might think you're avoiding conflict, but what you're really doing is inviting repeat offenses. Disrespect, like any destructive habit, grows in the soil of tolerance. And every time you brush it off in the name of keeping peace, you're sacrificing your dignity on the altar of someone else's comfort. People respect boundaries that are enforced, not announced, enforced. You can post all the quotes on social media, share all the videos about knowing your worth, and talk all day about cutting off toxic people. But if you don't hold your ground when it counts, nothing changes. People don't listen to your words. They respond to your standards. And your standards are not what you say they are. They are what you accept. Now, here's where it gets real. Some of you were trained from a young age to believe that love means enduring mistreatment, or that loyalty means staying silent in the face of wrong. You were taught to be the bigger person, turn the other cheek, or don't make things awkward. But let me ask you, who benefits from that silence? Who benefits from your discomfort? It's not you. The truth is, the people who benefit the most from your tolerance of disrespect are the ones who continue to dish it out without correction. They are counting on your silence. They are counting on your need for approval. And as long as that need outweighs your commitment to self-respect, you'll always be vulnerable to people who manipulate, use, or diminish you. This doesn't mean you go around yelling at everyone who crosses a line. It doesn't mean you become rude or reactive. Power doesn't need to raise its voice. It needs to raise its standards. It means you calmly, clearly, and confidently draw a line in the sand and refuse to cross it yourself. Because once you cross your own boundary, everyone else will too. Disrespect often starts small, the sarcastic joke, the constant interruptions, the dismissive tone. But if you don't check it when it's small, it won't stay small. Disrespect is like a weed. If you don't pull it up by the root early, it spreads and suffocates everything healthy around it. The most powerful people you know aren't necessarily the loudest, the richest, or the most physically imposing. They are the ones who have trained the world how to treat them by what they tolerate and what they don't. They walk into a room and the energy shifts, not because they demand attention, but because their presence is anchored in self-respect. They don't chase validation. They don't explain themselves to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. They simply don't entertain nonsense. The reason so many people struggle with setting boundaries is because they confuse kindness with submission. Being kind doesn't mean you're weak. Being loving doesn't mean you're a doormat. In fact, real love, starting with self-love, requires that you don't tolerate things that tear you down. When you let someone violate your boundaries in the name of keeping the relationship, you're not keeping anything. You're just slowly losing pieces of yourself. And eventually the cost becomes too high. What's even more dangerous is that the longer you tolerate disrespect, the more normal it feels. It becomes familiar. You start second-guessing your instincts. You wonder if you're overreacting. You tell yourself, maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe you're just being sensitive. But deep down, you know when something is off. You know when a tone, a comment, or a gesture cuts too deep, that feeling in your gut. That's not paranoia. That's your spirit saying, this is not okay. The moment you start listening to that voice, instead of silencing it to make others comfortable, that's the moment you begin reclaiming your power. One clear boundary speaks louder than 1,000 explanations. In life, you will find that the people who need the most explanation are often the ones who have no intention of respecting your boundary in the first place. They don't want clarity. They want loopholes. They want space to negotiate your standards down to something that benefits them, even if it costs you your peace, your energy, or your self-respect. That's why a clear, firm boundary is more effective than any long-winded justification, emotional plea, or intellectual debate. C, a boundary is not an invitation to a discussion. It is a declaration of value. It says, here is where I end and where you don't get to cross. When it's spoken clearly without fear, without guilt, without the need to be liked, it creates an immediate shift in how others perceive you. Because clarity eliminates confusion, and confusion is the breeding ground for manipulation. When you're unclear about what's okay and what's not, you open the door for people to test, push, and twist your limits. Think about how much time people waste explaining themselves to those who never really listened in the first place. You tell them how you feel. You explain why it hurt. You walk them through your entire emotional process like you're giving a lecture on empathy. And they nod, maybe apologize, maybe even promise to do better until the next time. Because the truth is, they never needed more explanation. They needed consequences. Clear boundaries speak in a language toxic people understand: certainty. When they realize that no amount of charm, guilt-tripping, gaslighting, or excuses will move the line you've drawn, they stop playing games or they walk away. Either outcome is a win. Most people don't lack the ability to set boundaries. They lack the courage to enforce them without apology. They fear being misunderstood. They fear rejection. But let's be real, if someone rejects you because you expect to be treated with basic respect, what exactly are you losing? Respect isn't something you should have to explain or defend. It's something you embody. And when you carry yourself with a clear, unwavering standard, people either rise to meet it or remove themselves. Clarity also simplifies your life. You don't have to guess where you stand with people who honor your boundaries. You don't have to constantly manage or monitor their behavior. You're no longer stuck in mental gymnastics, trying to analyze intentions or justify mistreatment. Instead, your time and energy are free to focus on people and places that align with your values. Now let's address the internal struggle. The part of you that feels bad for saying no, for pulling back, for drawing a line that someone else doesn't like. That guilt, that's not truth-ning. That's conditioning of a belief system that taught you your value comes from being agreeable, from being liked, from making sure everyone else is okay even when you're not. But let me tell you, being clear isn't cruel. Being direct isn't disrespectful. Protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's wise. A clear boundary doesn't mean you're closed off. It means you're open to connection that is healthy, mutual, and respectful. You're saying yes to love, but no to abuse. Yes to accountability, but no to emotional manipulation. Yes to communication, but no to chows. That clarity attracts what's real and repels what's fake. People will test you. That's human nature. But how you respond to the test determines the dynamic going forward. If your boundary wavers, They'll take it as a signal that you don't really mean it. If your boundary stands, they'll know the game is over. One clear no can do more to define a relationship than 100 hesitant maybes. Because when you are clear, consistent, and committed to honoring your own standards, you train others to do the same. And let's be honest, your peace is too expensive to lease out to people who can't follow the terms. Toxic people test what you allow, not what you say. It doesn't matter how eloquently you speak, how many boundaries you declare, or how passionately you express your feelings. If your actions don't back it up, toxic individuals will ignore your words and operate based on what you permit. They don't respond to language. They respond to limits. And if you fail to enforce those limits, you become a participant in your own mistreatment. Here's how it works. Toxic people thrive on power dynamics. They scan for weakness, not in your personality, but in your standards. They're not impressed by how confident you appear. They're interested in how consistent you are. You can say, I won't tolerate disrespect. But if you let that slide when it comes from someone you love, fear, or admire, you just showed them your real boundary. You can say, I'm done with drama. But if you keep answering the phone when chaos calls, your actions told the truth. They test you by pushing small boundaries first. They interrupt you mid-sentence. They make often comments laced with disrespect, then follow it with, I was just joking. They break small agreements, show up late, ignore your needs. If you let it go, they escalate. Because for them, every unchecked moment is permission. Every time you let something slide in the name of being understanding, they take a mental noting. A, this person doesn't enforce their limits. Or what you allow becomes the blueprint. Toxic people don't need to ask what you'll accept. They watch and learn. They observe your reactions. Do you flinch and stay silent when they cross a line? Do you try to explain away their behavior instead of addressing it? Do you sacrifice your peace to avoid being seen as difficult? If so, they've already gotten what they came for, control. And once they know they can get it, they'll use every tactic to keep it. The test isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. That's what makes it so dangerous. They don't always come at you with obvious disrespect. Sometimes it's wrapped in charm, apology, or affection. One day, they praise you. The next, they diminish you. One day, they're attentive. The next, they're absent. And when you confront the shift, they call you sensitive or accuse you of overthinking. That's not confusion. That's a conditioning. They want you to doubt your instincts so you're easier to manipulate. But the moment you respond with action, not anger, not arguments, but firm, non-negotiable action, you change the dynamic. You don't need to scream, beg, or convince anyone to treat you right. You need to show them that your standards are real and that the cost of crossing them is access to you. When you walk away instead of chasing, when you withhold energy instead of over-explaining, when you make consequences real, the test ends. Now, here's the hard truth on the people closest to you may be the first to test your boundaries. And that's where most people fail, because they confuse love with permission. But love without respect is not love. It's control. And anyone who truly loves you will adjust when you set a healthy standard. They may not like it at first. They may push back. But real relationships grow under pressure. Fake ones break. You don't have to be perfect to protect your peace. You just have to be consistent. You have to recognize the test when it comes and stand your ground, even when it's uncomfortable. Because when toxic people learn that testing you doesn't lead to access, it leads to distance. They move on to easier targets. The most powerful thing you can do is stop explaining your worth and start demonstrating it. Let your life teach people how to treat you. Let your boundaries speak for you. And when you do, toxic people will realize that you're not the one to play with. Not because you said it, but because you showed it. Self-respect repels manipulation. When you truly honor yourself, your decisions, and your standards, you become immune to the tactics that manipulators rely on. See, manipulation needs an entry point. It needs insecurity, self-doubt, the need for external validation. That's the soil it grows in. But when you're grounded in self-respect, those tactics have nowhere to land. You stop being a target because you no longer seek permission to be who you are. Manipulators look for people who can be guilted, shamed, flattered, or emotionally blackmailed into doing things against their better judgment. But self-respect is like armor. It protects your energy, your time, and your clarity. You don't fall for guilt trips because you know you're not responsible for managing someone else's emotions. You don't cave to pressure because your decisions come from principle, not fear. You don't get pulled into drama because you value peace more than attention. When you respect yourself, your no becomes complete. It doesn't come with a 10-minute explanation. It doesn't waver in the face of someone else's disappointment. It stands firm. That's what manipulators can't handle: certainty. Because their power comes from confusion. If they can keep you questioning yourself, they can keep controlling you. But when you're clear on your worth, their tactics fall flat. You see through the fake compliments. You recognize the passive aggression. You don't absorb their blame because you've stopped outsourcing your sense of value. Self-respect isn't loud, but it's undeniable. It shows up in how you carry yourself, how you speak, and how quickly you walk away from disrespect. You don't need to argue with people who twist your words. You just exit the conversation. You don't waste time proving your intentions to people committed to misunderstanding you. You simply stop giving access to those who haven't earned it. The truth is, manipulators are only effective when you doubt your own intuition. But when you respect yourself, you trust that inner voice. You don't second guess your gut just because someone tells you you're overreacting. You know the difference between peace and control, between real connection and emotional games. You choose honesty over harmony, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. You also stop over-explaining. That's a big one. Manipulators love to keep you talking because the more you explain, the more data they have to twist and use against you. But self-respect says, I've said what I needed to say. You heard me. The rest is up to you. You learn that silence is power, not passivity. That walking away is a form of communication. That peace is the loudest rejection of chaos. And don't get it twisted. Self-respect doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. It means your kindness has boundaries. Your generosity has conditions. Your empathy isn't up for abuse. You still show love, but only to those who honor it. You still forgive, but not at the expense of your sanity. You still serve, but from overflow, not depletion. In the end, manipulators feed on people who haven't realized their own power yet. But the moment you do, everything changes. You no longer chase closure. You create it. You don't fear losing people who disrespect you. You release them. And instead of being reactive, you become selective. Selective with your time, your trust, your presence. That's the quiet power of self-respect. It doesn't beg. It doesn't explain. It doesn't chase. It simply is. And when it shows up, manipulation doesn't stand a chance. Losing the wrong people clears space for the right ones. At first, it might feel like a setback. Losing people you've known for years, people you've shared memories with, people you thought would be in your life forever. But when those people are draining you, disrespecting you, or constantly crossing your boundaries, their absence isn't a loss. It's a breakthrough. Because the wrong people take up space that the right people can't step into until you let go. See, toxic relationships don't always look toxic at first. Sometimes they look familiar. Sometimes they feel comfortable. Sometimes they're wrapped in history, loyalty, or obligation. But comfort doesn't mean healthy. And time doesn't equal alignment. You can spend a decade trying to grow in a space that was only meant to be seasonal. But the longer you hold on, the longer you delay your own growth. Letting go is not easy, especially when you've built emotional habits around certain people. You're used to calling them. You're used to explaining yourself to them. You're used to lowering your standards just to keep the peace. But here's the hard truth. Keeping the wrong people close costs you more than you think. It costs you clarity. It costs you confidence. It costs you opportunities. Because as long as your energy is tied up trying to fix what's broken, you won't have the capacity to receive what's whole. When you release the wrong people, you make room for relationships that align with who you are now, not who you used to be. You allow space for connections based on mutual respect, not manipulation, on truth, not performance, on presence, not convenience. And the right people, the ones who see you, value you, and grow with you, can only show up when there's space to be filled. Don't be afraid of the void. The silence after the separation isn't empty. It's sacred. It's where healing begins. It's where you hear your own voice again. It's where you realize you never needed approval to be worthy, and you never needed chaos to feel connected. It's where you stop chasing people and start attracting peace. People often ask, but what if I never find better? That's fear talking. That's scarcity thinking. And that's exactly the mindset that keeps you stuck in cycles that no longer serve you. When you let go of what drains you, you don't just gain peace, you gain vision. You start to see what you truly want and who you truly are without all the noise clouding your identity. Understand this: every healthy relationship you desire is waiting on the other side of your decision to stop entertaining what isn't. The friendships that uplift, the partnerships that respect, the circles that sharpen you, they're not found in compromise. They're found in clarity. And clarity starts when you're willing to stop justifying the presence of people who no longer deserve access. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to start a war. You don't even need a dramatic ending. You just need to decide that protecting your peace is more important than preserving a connection that's rooted in dysfunction. And once that decision is made, the right people won't feel like work. They'll feel like alignment. You'll know it when it happens. Conversations will flow. Support will be mutual. Boundaries will be respected without explanation. You won't feel the constant need to prove your worth, walk on eggshells, or question your intuition. You'll just be. And the right people will meet you there. So yes, losing the wrong people might hurt, but staying connected to them hurts more. It just hides behind familiarity. The longer you carry what's not meant for you, the heavier your journey becomes. But the moment you let go, your path clears, your vision sharpens, your spirit lifts. And what fills that space next? That's where life gets good. Power begins where tolerance for nonsense ends. The moment you stop tolerating the unnecessary chaos, drama, and disrespect in your life, you start to reclaim the power that was always yours to begin with. Tolerance isn't the same as patience. Patience is waiting for something to improve. Tolerance is simply enduring something you know is harmful. And when you tolerate nonsense, you're essentially giving your energy, your time, and your peace to things that are actively depleting you. Here's the kicker: you can only control so much of your external environment, but you have 100% control over how much nonsense you allow into your life. You control who you entertain, who you engage with, and how much you let toxic behavior slide. The moment you stop tolerating disrespect, manipulation, or unnecessary negativity is the moment you start to own your life again. You take back the power you were giving away to things and people who don't deserve it. The thing about tolerance is that it's often seen as a virtue, a sign of maturity, a quality that shows you're compassionate and understanding. But when it's applied to people in situations that harm your mental health, your emotional well-being, and your growth, tolerance becomes a silent killer. It's not love to tolerate abuse. It's not kindness to accept disrespect. And it's not strength to endure toxicity in the name of peace. What you tolerate, you validate. And once you start validating dysfunction, you allow it to multiply. Every time you tolerate nonsense, you're telling yourself that you're not worth better. You're telling yourself that you can handle things that undermine your happiness and peace. But the truth is, real power doesn't come from enduring. It comes from choosing what you will and won't accept. The moment you draw a line in the sand and refuse to tolerate what's beneath you, your sense of self-worth and respect rises. You stop shrinking to accommodate others' chaos and start expanding into your own power. You see, power isn't just about being able to control or dominate others. It's about having enough self-respect to walk away from anything that threatens your peace. When you stop tolerating nonsense, you stop compromising your values for the sake of avoiding conflict. You stop letting fear of rejection or discomfort dictate your actions. You become the standard in your life, not the exception. You refuse to let anyone or anything push you around. The real shift happens when you realize that your peace, your time, and your energy are non-negotiable. You become unapologetically discerning about who and what you allow into your space. You stop entertaining conversations that drain you, relationships that limit you, and environments that don't serve your purpose. You start seeing your energy as sacred, something to be guarded and respected, not freely given away. This isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about being clear and intentional. You can still show love, still care, still be compassionate, but only when it doesn't come at the expense of your own well-being. You stop tolerating people who take more than they give, who drain your spirit without ever filling your cup. And once you stop tolerating that nonsense, you'll notice something magical happening. Your boundaries get stronger, your peace becomes more unshakable, and your life starts to flow with the kind of people and opportunities that honor who you truly are. A power isn't passive, it's active. It's in the choices you make, the boundaries you set, and the decisions to walk away from what doesn't align with your highest self. When you stop tolerating nonsense, you stop being the victim of other people's emotional baggage and start being the creator of your own life. You take responsibility for what you allow and what you reject. You stop giving your attention to what drains you and start giving it to what elevates you. And here's the best part. When you start rejecting nonsense, you start attracting the right energy. You'll begin to draw in people who respect your boundaries, who honor your time, and who align with your values. The more you stop tolerating disrespect, the more you'll see how many opportunities you've been missing out on by hanging on to the wrong people and the wrong situations. Your power is waiting for you on the other side of tolerance. It's waiting for you to stop settling for less than what you deserve. It's waiting for you to choose peace over drama, respect over manipulation, and clarity over confusion. Power begins where tolerance for nonsense ends. And the moment you make that choice, your entire life shifts. Toxic people thrive in the spaces where your standards are negotiable. So make them non-negotiable. You don't need to shout, explain, or beg to be respected. You need to stand, act, and walk. One sentence backed by unshakable conviction is louder than 1,000 empty warnings. I don't allow that in my life. Not, please stop. Not, I wish you wouldn't. But a clear final line. Power doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being clear on what you'll never tolerate again. The moment you decide that your peace, your time, and your dignity are worth more than keeping anyone comfortable, that's the moment toxic people lose all control over you for good.